Okay, short-term survival stuff. This is food. Okay, most of you are going to have 3 to 5 days of food on hand. Um, some of you will have more. Uh, Downside, of course, is that most of that has to be cooked. Um, and in my 25-minute video, I talked for a moment about propane cooking options. There are also gasoline powered um, burners that you can get, butane. There are a wealth of products out there. I'm not going to show them. I showed the two that I most support, and I'm not going to get into them here. But assuming that you have, the means to cook in a situation where the electricity is out, possibly the electricity, the gas, and the water, um, you will have, on average, 3 to 5 days worth of food in your house. Okay, so what do we do for a longer period of time? Some people are fond of 30-day survival kits. They go for around $200, $250. Uh, they're not the worst idea in the world. They're not the best food in the world. Uh, but they're not the worst idea in the world. I'm not going to show them to you because there are a multitude of options. Um, as for myself, if you're going that route, I prefer Mountain House. Wise is not bad. Wise emergency food is not bad. I've tasted both. I used to camp, so I've actually had some reason to use freeze-dried food. Now that being said, other than that, the best idea is to try to have 30 days worth of food on hand at all times. Uh, United States federal government says that you should have 7 days worth of food on hand at all times. Now, for some of you, this is a lot harder than others. My better half, for example, eats nothing but fresh food. Um, so we have to shop sometimes 2 to 3 times a week if she's home for a whole week. So that there's fresh food in the house. For people like that, this is a problem. Um, you know, Storing 7 days of food, storing 30 days of food can be a real issue. My advice here is what I do around the house for myself and for her is that I store mostly comfort foods, pasta, rice. These are long-term storage foods. You know, I store a lot of the food that I eat because I eat pretty much anything. I'm a Walmart boy. Uh, Given the chance, just about anything from Walmart will satisfy me. I raised by wolves. Uh, Not a big fresh food eater, except for meat. Meat can get tricky in a longer term survival situation. If you're talking more than, say, 9 days, meat can get tricky. And you should try to use up all your meat in that period of time. Uh, Cooked meat lasts longer than raw meat. You should know that. Um, but yes, you'll use up most of your meat in a relatively short period of time. Again, there is freeze-dried meat, but I actually don't keep a lot of that on hand, mostly because of the expense. It's hundreds of dollars for a relatively small amount of freeze-dried meat. or it's 50, $60 a can for a number 6 can of freeze-dried meat. Um, and that can get really expensive really quickly. For 30 days, you're looking at several $100s for freeze-dried meat. Something you should know, actually, is that most freeze-dried food packages, the 30-day supply, come meatless. Um, some do have, chicken teriyaki or chicken, but most actually come meatless. It's pasta, it's rice, it's, the things that I stock myself. If you're going to do any kind of long-term storage, you want airtight containers. You can find them on Amazon. You can find them on eBay. You can find them. You just stick them into Google. You just stick those words into Google or Bing. I've been using Bing more lately since Google's been kind of weird lately. You just stick those words into Google or Bing or Amazon or wherever, and you will get a wealth of choices. There's nothing in particular that I can recommend. I use half a dozen different manufacturers. Um, if possible, I mean, if you're a family that eats boxed and canned foods, then you're safe. You just double up a little here and there until you've got you know 14, 21, 30 days of food on hand. Uh, you want to use the FIFO system, first in, first out. Um, I mean, you're always using your oldest stuff first. Uh, you don't want to use your newest stuff first because that can make the oldest stuff go bad. That's how that works and why that works. Restaurants do that on a regular basis, and smart preppers do that on a regular basis. Um, you know, there are certain foods that are better for long-term storage than others. Uh, Peanut butter, rice, pasta, flour. Flour's a bit tricky though, because you just may not have an oven. Uh, in an emergency, even if you have a gas oven, your gas oven is probably electrically regulated, so it's out. So flour can be a bit tricky. Pancake mix stores for a good long time as long as it's in a airtight container. You know, um, decent a decent maple syrup will last for a while. You can get canned bacon. You can check that on Amazon, or you can just stick that in Google or Bing. Canned bacon, cans of bacon, and just leave that on the shelf. It'll last a good year or two, unless you need it for an emergency. Um, there's really nothing earth-shattering when it comes to food. My advice is to use as much of what you regularly use as possible. Vegans and vegetarians, you know, there are some products out there that are canned and boxed that'll, you know, last a year or 2 years that can sit on your shelf unless you use them. Mostly Indian food starters, some Mexican food starters. Um, I've used both. I don't care for the Indian stuff. Mexican I can stomach. I'm a steak and potatoes boy at the end of the day. But that's me. I like my mac and cheese, premium mac and cheese from Walmart. Um, if you're poor, a good thing to stock up on is ramen noodles, um, and maybe a daily vitamin. You know, this way you're getting your vitamins and you have something to eat. You'll need more water, but you know what you're going to eat is basically up to you. But you should I believe that every household should have 30 days of food on hand. Um, Again, that can be harder for some than others. You need to talk to the people in your family about what they're willing to eat and what they're not. I've done that with my better half, and a lot of this food that I have stored is food that I eat that she will eat in an emergency. Um, I don't store anything that nobody's going to eat because that's a waste of money and a waste of time, and it gives you a false sense of preparedness. Um, if you have an interest and you're thinking about buying freeze-dried food, companies like Wise will send you a sample. Mountain House you can just buy anywhere. You can buy them at Walmart, I think, in the sporting goods section. You try one, see what you think of it. Mountain House you can buy individually. Wise you have to buy in big chunks. And there's Augustin Farms. Um, they're pretty good. I like their stuff. I have some of their stuff on my shelves. Um, that all being said, the idea is to have as much food, a 30-day supply of food in your house at all times, if that's possible for you. If not, then a 14-day supply, a 21-day supply. We're talking because, if you're talking a 14-day emergency, it may be 21 days till, food delivery is available or until the stores are back online. With that said, this is going along. Your best bet is to stock as much food that you actually eat as possible. Rotate it in the first in, first out method and go from there. Okay, that's food. That's David Kane's 30 Day Survival. Uh, Stay smart, stay prepped, stay safe.